The population of mountain gorillas in Rwanda has been increasing, with new babies named every year during the renowned Kwitiziina ceremony. This increase, however, is not proportional to the habitat. The African Wildlife Foundation has handed 27 hectares of land to the Rwanda Development Board to expand gorillas' habitat.
Yeah, this is a very important piece of land for the park, for government of Rwanda and for the people of Rwanda. We acquired it through a willing seller who wanted to sell it. We talked to the government of Rwanda. They said it was okay for us to go ahead. We negotiated with a willing seller, and we raised money from Friends of Conservation and Friends of Africa, and we raised that from a foundation, and we bought the land and handed over to government of Rwanda. We're excited about this because this park is so important for the world, it's so important for Africa, but it's so important for Rwanda as the economy grows.
Today's donation of 27.8 hectares of land by the African Wildlife Foundation to the government of Rwanda is significant. It is significant because we have witnessed a tremendous growth of the number of gorillas in the national park. In fact, only about 7 years ago we had 7 families. Today we have 20 families of gorillas, which means they've grown almost 3 times. But the land that they live in is still the same. What is also interesting is that within the Virunga Massif that is shared between Congo, Rwanda and Uganda, we have in the last census seen 480 gorillas in 2010. Almost 65% of that was living in Rwanda. That means that as the growth happens, we have to start thinking about the habitats. And so when African Wildlife Foundation donated this land to Rwanda, it was very important for us because we took it and accepted it and added it to the national park because we wanted to give a bigger home to gorillas. Obviously 27.8 hectares is only 27.8 hectares. It's not so big, but it's something, and it's the beginning of thinking about what mitigation factors we need to do to make sure that gorillas, as they grow, have a home in Rwanda.
African Wildlife Foundation is extraordinarily excited about the land handover to the Rwanda National Government today, RDB. Obviously this means an increase in gorilla habitat, and I think that's a significant step as far as African conservation is concerned. There are many African parks, there are parks in the United States that are being degazetted, so this is really a monumentous moment in my opinion. We feel that the model that we're creating here certainly has an opportunity for application elsewhere throughout the continent. I think that's very exciting. In addition to mountain gorillas, there are many other species that are threatened. We're losing a lot of elephants throughout the continent. Rhino populations are dropping, lion populations are dropping, and here we are in the midst of a country wherein you've got a critically endangered great ape, the mountain gorilla. It's the only great ape on the continent whose population is obviously increasing, and we're excited about that and want a new born.
The expansion of the gorilla's habitat is a key backup to conservation efforts that is, however, demanding and expensive. Habitat expansion, among other conservation initiatives, should be implemented in a manner that impacts local communities positively.
AWF works in about 18 different countries. Obviously, we're focused on many kinds of species throughout the continent. We've got a grand land vision. We believe that land is extraordinarily important. But I have to say that we also believe that working with people is very important. And I think it's very safe to say that about 60% of AWF's work is actually with people. The other 40% is focused on wildlife. I also like to say that in the end, if we do our job correctly, not only wildlife is better off, but people are better off also. And I think Rwanda is a very good example of that. We've got Sabinyo Silverback Lodge, which is a very creative enterprise project that was basically orchestrated by the African Wildlife Foundation a number of years ago. It certainly is a project that was instrumental in terms of protecting mountain gorillas, but I think the great thing about Sabinyo Silverback Lodge is the economic benefits that ultimately filter down to the community. Over the course of the last 10 years, Sabinyo Silverback Lodge has created about $3 million for the local community. And that's a pretty creative step, a very important step as far as conservation is concerned.
Everything that we do for conservation must be beneficial to the local communities. If it's not, then we will not do it. Because our government is very cautious about including communities in our economic development plans. And so any decision that we make, first and foremost, must benefit the communities living here. And secondly, it must benefit the entire biodiversity, including the gorillas. And then, of course, it must affect the economy as well. So today's donation is actually a good thing to the people, because they're going to be having a lot more opportunities coming from the national park, which they've benefited for many, many years. But other than that, we're also going to be thinking in the future, communities first. We're currently doing studies. We're studying what it would take to actually increase the gorilla habitats. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The impact on the socioeconomic status of people living here, the livelihoods here. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and RDB is currently doing analysis to come up with what is actually possible. We don't know what that is today, but we're working on that.
Despite the fact that remarkable strides were made in protecting gorillas, there is still a lot more to do to ensure sustainable survival.
Gorillas are still endangered species. They're still listed as such. But we have mitigated that in Rwanda because we've seen them growing. So the extent of them being endangered or being in trouble for being extinct, I think has significantly reduced, but they remain endangered.
I think it's very, very important to worry about mountain gorillas in the future. Mountain gorilla populations have been increasing over the last 20 years. That's very, very exciting. The population hovers only at about 1,000. There's certainly no room for complacency whatsoever. We've always got to keep an eye on mountain gorilla populations. We've got to keep an eye on mountain gorilla habitat, and that's what AWF is committed to do. This is a first step, and obviously there's lots more work to do. We do hope that the Rwandan government has a grander vision. We do believe that there are opportunities in the future to perhaps add additional land to the national park. That's going to be absolutely essential, but it's going to take a collaborative approach. African Wildlife Foundation is extraordinarily pleased to be in a position to offer assistance. We're certainly going to be very, very excited about the possibility of raising money to assist the government in that particular regard. So I'm very, very optimistic that this is a first step, and there will be additional steps down the road. This is the land of 1,000 hills, and I hope there are 1,000 more steps that we can take in terms of protecting mountain gorillas. In terms of land throughout the continent, I think you have to look at it in a variety of different ways. We work directly, as I mentioned, with every national park in a country where we work, and so all of the protected lands that are under the umbrella of national parks obviously are part of the work that AWF is responsible for. Another part of the work that we do is in terms of community conservancies. Those are lands that reside outside of the national parks, and that community work is extraordinarily important.